Randall.
An inmate at the Virginia Department of Corrections, Red Onion State Prison. To accept this call, press 0.
This is Randall Via, and I'm currently doing 1,214 years for capital murder in Red Onion State Prison in the state of Virginia, in the USA. This is my podcast, Red Onion Randy, and I hope you enjoy listening to me today. Today, I'm going to talk about a new development in my case, and actually talk about an inmate that I used to know, named Giarratano. I guess I'm going to be a little all over the place, but let's get to it anyway. Everybody, at least I think so, has listened to me talk about my case, my experience with John Sheldon, and so on and so forth. A couple of weeks ago, this new guy came in the pod named KC, and white dude, a little bit younger than me, and quite honestly, I had no intention whatsoever of even speaking to the guy. And it's not because of him, because quite frankly, I didn't know the dude. I'd never seen him before, and I know nothing about him. I'm just in that place in my life where I'm tired of talking to new people in prison. I'm tired of constantly being surrounded by negative people. I don't want that in my life anymore. I only want to talk to people that are positive, that are like they're trying, like they're at least doing something with their lives instead of just crying and complaining all the damn time. And that's what most prisoners do. Like, so I'm tired of it. I don't have the energy to deal with it because I have so much else on my plate that I am dealing with. I'm just tired of being around negative people. So for that reason and only that reason, I had no intention of talking to the guy. Long story short, I was talking to this guy named Preacher that I know, and excuse me, and KC came over and started kind of talking to Preacher. I apologize for my coughing. Unfortunately, I'm in quarantine right now, sick with COVID, and I'll do an episode on that later. But so we kind of got to talking, and one thing led to another, and we started talking about the law. And as it turns out, KC, he actually knows more about the law than I do myself. And, like, when he was breaking some things down, like, I'm not a stupid person by far. And even I was struggling to understand some of the things that he was teaching on about the law, which that was actually heartening to me because normally I'm the one that knows the most about the law. I do study it to the best of my ability. I ain't the sharpest knife in the drawer, but I'll still cut through something. So we got to speaking, and he was telling me about this concept called manifest injustice. And, I'd never even heard of that before. So, I went to the law library, and I got the rules and stuff on manifest injustice, and I saw a few things in there that are actually beneficial to me and beneficial to my case. So I'm not even going to try to explain it yet, for the simple fact I haven't studied it enough to explain it. Maybe I'll do that in a future episode. And then we got to talking further, and he was like, look, I have a lawyer, and he's really good. He's gotten a lot of guys out of prison. And, his name is Brent Jackson. So he gave me his lawyer's address and phone number and everything, and now I'm currently in the process of connecting with Brent Jackson to hopefully set up a conference call so I can speak to him and explain my case to him and everything and ask him questions and answer whatever questions he has and so on and so forth. I'm a little happy about that. But I have heard numerous inmates talk about, oh, man, this lawyer's the best in the state. Nah, man, this lawyer is and that lawyer is. And I'm over it. I've heard it all the time. And I felt the same way when KC was telling me, hey, look, man, Brent Jackson is a really good lawyer. You really need to connect with this cat. So I'm like, all right. But in my mind, I'm like, yeah, I'll get his address from him. I'll send him a letter, and we'll see what happens. And then we got to talking further, and he was like, man, Joe Giarratano works for Brent Jackson and was a paralegal. I'm like, wait a minute. I know Joe Giarratano. Joe Giarratano was a stand-up dude. He actually tried to help me a little bit with my case way back in the day. Unfortunately, I was time barred because, as to the best of my knowledge, I am the only person in the United States of America that was charged and convicted of capital murder that has never received an appeal. I never got an appeal. So Joe Giarratano helped me to file for an appeal and so on and so forth, but the court's like, yeah, your time is up. Screw you, buddy. And they just sent it back. So I'm like, whatever, man. I honestly, I let it drop, and that's when I went into a really dark period. And that's when I really started hurting people in prison. That's when I started fighting people and doing all this stupid stuff, because I basically lost hope. So I know Joe Giarratano. Now, Joe Giarratano was convicted of brutally raping and murdering a young woman. But Joe Giarratano was innocent. He was so innocent, in fact, that the mother and the sister of the victim that was brutally raped and murdered, and if I remember correctly, I think that she was actually dismembered, like she was tortured to death. It wasn't just, put two in the head and, she died a quick death. I think, like, she suffered horribly before she died. Yeah, that's just not good. But the mother and the sister of that young lady believed in Joe Giarratano's innocence. And they actually used to write him. They actually used to send him money every now and then for commissary. But yet, he never got out of prison. I mean, even the own victim's family believed in his innocence. And Joe Giarratano was actually on death row. And he actually orchestrated an escape from death row back in the 80s. And I can't remember correctly, but I believe there was 9 inmates on death row in Mecklenburg back in the 80s, and Joe Giarratano came up with the plan that they was going to take a bunch of COs hostage and so on and so forth. So they did that. Everybody on death row banded together, and when they had to send in an 8-man SWAT team, the inmates actually beat up the SWAT members, took them hostage, and they stripped their clothes, their riot gear and all that stuff that they had on. And there were 9 inmates, and there were 8 sets of uniforms. So they all basically literally drew straws. And Joe Giarratano, who was the mastermind of all of this, he drew the short straw, so he had to stay. And the other guys, they put on the uniforms, and they went out, left the building and everything, left the compound, and they actually escaped. Most of them got caught really, really quickly, and I think only one of them actually made it to the Canadian border before he was caught, if I remember the story correctly. And it's been a good 15, 18 years ago since I talked to Giarratano and I heard the story and everything. And that's the kind of dude Giarratano was. Like, it was his master plan, but he was such a stand-up guy that, like, he drew straws. Like, if I would have been there, I'm like, nah, man, dude, you're definitely one of the ones that are going. But saying, I'm sorry, COVID is kicking my ass. But anyway, he made the plan and he stuck by the rules of it, even though it kind of cost him. And honestly, if Joe Giarratano would have made it outside the gates, he would have been one of the dudes that would have made it. They would probably still be searching for him to this day. Incredibly smart guy, loyal, he's a good dude. And he helped a lot of people with their cases in prison. He actually helped a lot of people get released from prison. He helped a lot of guys get shorter sentences and everything. Like, he's a really good guy. He never charged anybody. And that's one thing that is a really good hustle in prison. As a person who knows the law really well, they can charge inmates to help them with their case, and inmates will pay it. Joe Giarratano never charged anything. He had Edge, the guitarist from U2, used to pen pal with him and support him and send him a little money every now and then. Susan Sarandon, the Hollywood actress. Like, Joe Giarratano had a lot of people believing in his case. And he had, yeah, I remember we was in the pod together back in the day, and he had finally gotten the courts to agree to retest the DNA in his case. And I remember him coming back into the pod, just down and depressed, like, man, like, honestly, I think he was on the verge of suicide. And he sit there and told me when I pulled up, oh, my, yo, dude, what's going on, man? You all right? And he was like, well, then he explained to me that when he got to court and they was going to retest the DNA, that all of a sudden they had a fire in the evidence room. Now, the evidence that was beside his, to the left and to the right, didn't catch on fire. The evidence below his didn't catch on fire, and the evidence above his didn't catch on fire. Only his evidence somehow spontaneously combusted and destroyed all the DNA from that particular case. And he wound up spending another 12, 15 years in prison. Every single time something good happened in his case, all of a sudden the police and the prosecutor would do something underhanded to keep him in prison because they did not want to admit that they put an innocent man in prison. They didn't want to do that. But I just heard from KC a couple of weeks ago that Giarratano had actually made parole. They had finally released him from prison. Which I was really happy to hear that. Like, I like Joe Giarratano. He's a good dude. You know where you stand with him. Like, you don't have to worry about underhanded or dirty stuff, because if he's going to do something, he's going to do it to your face. He's not going to do it behind your back. And I got a lot of respect for guys like that in prison, because there are so many stone cold bitches in these walls. When you find a good dude like that, like, it makes you feel better about yourself that you simply know him. The long story short, the reason I'm telling you all this about Joe Giarratano is I found out that he works as a paralegal for Brent Jackson. So when I do get a chance to talk to Brent Jackson on the phone, I'm going to mention, hey, I know Joe Giarratano. You can talk to him about me. He can tell you about me because he knows me. He knows how I carry myself. He knows what kind of man I am. I see kind of providence in this a little bit. I wound up talking to a guy that I had no intentions whatsoever of even speaking to. Like, I literally had no intention of even just nodding hello to the dude or, what's up, man, and keep it on. Like, I wasn't going to speak to him at all. But, I'm glad that I wound up talking to KC, and, I found some new information that would help me with my case. And the new information, oh, by the way, yeah, sorry, a little scatterbrain with the COVID and everything. It's kind of hard to focus sometimes with this stuff. I won't have to go through the state courts. I can go ahead, filing under the manifest injustice rule, I can skip the state courts and I can go straight to the Fourth Circuit Court of the federal court system, which will give me much better leeway, because the state courts, they usually side with the state courts. Like, even in clear-cut cases where the state courts, the lower courts were wrong, the higher state courts will still rule with them. I find comfort in the fact that I can go ahead and skip the state courts. I know Joe Giarratano. He would not work for Brent Jackson unless Brent Jackson was the same. And it's only going to cost me $7,500 to get Brent Jackson to completely review my case from front to back, top to bottom, which that makes it a lot easier on me. Now, of course, I don't have that money. I don't even have close to that money, but, I'm hoping that at least in the Magic Well, my children's novel that's for sale, only $5 on Amazon Kindle, I really would appreciate it, people, if y'all would go and buy it. It's a good story. Your kids will like it. And, you know, it'll help me out a lot, you know, because I don't plan on using that money to buy some damn Snicker bars and some suits. That money's going towards a...
You have 1 minute remaining.
That money is going towards getting me out of prison. But that's the update on my legal case and a little bit about Joe Giarratano. He's, like I said, he was a character. I really liked that dude, and I kind of miss him, to be honest with you. But I thought y'all would enjoy hearing about him instead of hearing about me all the time. This is Red Onion Randy. I hope you enjoy listening to me today. For those of you who listen to me on Apple Podcasts, I would appreciate it if you would review me and rate me, preferably 5 stars, but I'll take whatever you think I'm worth. Take care. Stay safe.
Thank you for using GTL.